Last Valentine's Day marked the end of my marriage to Sarah, my wife of 5 years and partner for 7. I thought our relationship was strong, grounded in love and trust. We had shared so much, from joyous milestones to challenges that only brought us closer, at least, that's what I believed. But it turned out that belief was built on lies. What unfolded that evening shattered not only my trust in Sarah but also the life I thought we were building together. It started that afternoon when Sarah texted me at 4:45 p.m., just before her workday was supposed to end. She said her Aunt Julie had suddenly managed to find a date for Valentine's evening but was struggling to find a babysitter for her kids. Sarah said she felt obligated to help Julie out since she rarely got opportunities to date. Julie, according to Sarah, had always struggled with relationships and deserved a chance to enjoy herself. I could sense Sarah's determination to help, so I didn't question it. Even though I had planned a romantic dinner for us at an upscale restaurant, a surprise I'd been looking forward to for weeks, I didn't want to seem selfish or unsupportive. I told Sarah it was fine and even suggested that I could join her at Julie's later to help out. Sarah quickly dismissed the idea, saying Julie didn't feel comfortable having men around the kids. She explained that Julie's children were still recovering from the trauma of living with their abusive father, who was no longer in the picture. That explanation stung a little, but I understood. Sarah had always had a big heart and a selfless nature, which I admired. I reassured myself that this was just another example of her kindness. It wasn't how I envisioned spending Valentine's Day, but I figured plans could change for a good reason. I believed Sarah's story without question and told myself that I could wait until we had time to celebrate properly another day. However, as I sat at home, disappointed but trying to stay positive, an hour later everything began to unravel. Sarah posted a status update on Facebook that instantly made my stomach drop. She had checked in at the very restaurant where I had made our reservation, alone. What made it worse was that the post was hidden from me and all our mutual friends, a detail she clearly overlooked because her 13-year-old cousin Jenny could still see it. Jenny, unaware of the story Sarah had spun about babysitting her, messaged me. She asked how I was doing and casually mentioned that Sarah had checked in at the restaurant. Jenny thought it was odd because Sarah had told her earlier that day she would be babysitting. It was like the pieces of a puzzle I didn't know existed were suddenly falling into place. Jenny, curious and sharp for her age, even sent me a screenshot of Sarah's status update. Sarah had tried to carefully craft the post to hide her plans, but she had slipped up. There was no mention of me or even a photo of us together, which was unusual for Sarah on a day as special as Valentine's Day. Instead, her status showed her dining alone. Jenny was suspicious, and I could feel her unease through her messages. I didn't let on that Sarah's lie was unraveling right before me, but inside, my mind was racing. After Jenny's message, a gnawing sense of doubt consumed me. I needed answers. Sarah's claim that she was babysitting didn't line up with her being at the restaurant I had booked for us, and I couldn't ignore the growing unease. As my mind churned through possibilities, I decided to dig deeper. I opened the Find My Friends app, something Sarah and I had installed long ago for convenience but rarely used. Her location pinged not at the restaurant or Aunt Julie's house but across town in an unfamiliar neighborhood. My heart sank as I stared at the map, the blinking dot confirming Sarah was somewhere she shouldn't be. To gain more clarity, I reached out to one of her coworkers via Facebook. I didn't share what I suspected but casually asked about Sarah's day at work. Her response confirmed my worst fears. She mentioned that Sarah often spent time with a colleague named Alex, too much time, in her opinion. The coworker went on to describe how Sarah and Alex regularly exchanged papers and files, but she suspected they weren't work-related. She even mentioned how they ate lunch together daily, their interactions always seeming closer than mere professional camaraderie. Then came the detail that made everything click. The coworker casually asked if the location I mentioned was near the Sunny Day development, where Alex happened to live. My blood ran cold. The map confirmed Sarah was in that exact area. All the pieces of her deceitful puzzle began falling into place. Her fabricated babysitting story, the dinner she had kept hidden, her sudden presence in Alex's neighborhood. That night, Sarah came home late. But by then, I had taken action. I had gathered all her belongings, her clothes, shoes, personal items, and thrown them onto the front lawn. The sight of her life scattered in the grass felt symbolic of what she had done to our marriage. Light rain began to fall, soaking everything, as if nature itself was driving the point home. When Sarah pulled into the driveway, Her headlights illuminated the mess. She stepped out of her car, stunned. I stayed inside, locking the door and listening as she pounded on it, screaming my name. Her pleas were desperate, her tone filled with panic. I didn't respond. I heard her call her parents, crying and stammering through the story. It was clear they had no idea what had happened, and their confusion only deepened as she tried to paint me as irrational. But as her parents pressed her for answers, Sarah's lies unraveled. She finally admitted over the phone that she hadn't been babysitting. She had lied to me to spend Valentine's Day with Alex. I stepped outside when her father arrived. He looked shocked, his face betraying disbelief as he surveyed the chaos. Sarah, kneeling in the wet grass, was sobbing uncontrollably, her belongings scattered around her. It was a pitiful sight. I addressed them both, making it clear that I knew the truth. I stated plainly that Sarah had been with Alex that night, and I had the evidence to prove it. The moment I mentioned Alex's name, Sarah froze. Her sobs turned into stammering denials, but her reaction betrayed her guilt. Her father looked at her, his expression hardening as the truth became undeniable. I demanded that Sarah show me her phone messages with Alex if she wanted to prove her innocence. She refused, her hands trembling as she clutched her phone to her chest. Her silence spoke volumes. Her father, now visibly angry, asked if what I was saying was true. All Sarah could do was break down further, her voice rising into hysterical wails. She didn't need to say anything. Her inability to deny it convincingly confirmed everything. Sarah's sobs echoed through the rain as I stood there, watching the scene unfold with a mix of anger and detachment. Her father, still in shock, demanded answers. "Is it true? Were you really with Alex?" he asked, his voice firm but tinged with disbelief. Sarah couldn't respond. Her trembling hands clutched her phone, her gaze fixed on the ground as tears streamed down her face. I didn't hold back. In a calm, deliberate tone, I explained everything I had discovered. I described how she had hidden her location from me on Facebook but made the mistake of forgetting her cousin Jenny. I recounted the messages from her coworker, the suspicious behavior, and the fact that her location pinged near Alex's house. When I said Alex's name again, this time clearly, Alexander, Sarah visibly flinched. Her pale face and quivering lip were all the confirmation I needed. I turned to her father and said, "This isn't just about tonight. Sarah lied, cheated, and betrayed me. This isn't a misunderstanding." Sarah's father's expression shifted from shock to anger. "Sarah, what have you done?" he demanded, his voice filled with frustration and disappointment. Still, she said nothing, her tears now turning into muffled sobs. I took a deep breath and pressed further. "If I'm wrong, prove it. Show us your messages with Alex right now. Prove you've got nothing to hide." I held my ground, staring her down. But Sarah's silence spoke louder than anything she could have said. She shook her head weakly, mumbling incoherent denials that didn't hold water. Her father stepped closer and snapped, "Give him the phone!" His booming voice startled her, but still, she clutched it tightly, refusing to unlock it. That was the final nail in the coffin. She had no defense left. As the rain intensified, Sarah broke down completely, collapsing into the wet grass. Her sobs turned into wails, her guilt laid bare for everyone to see. I looked at her father and said, "This is who she's been behind my back. She made her choices, and now she has to face the consequences." Her father, clearly ashamed, nodded. Without a word, he bent down to help her gather her soaked belongings. Sarah barely moved, her sobs choking out apologies that no one believed. She begged her father not to hate her, but his cold silence said it all. The reality of her situation seemed to hit her like a tidal wave. Sarah realized this wasn't just a bad night, this was the end of everything. She wouldn't be coming back to our home. The life we had built together was over. She had lost me, her trust, and her dignity in one fell swoop. As I stood watching, I thought about the dog we had raised together, Lucky. I was thankful that Lucky was inside, unaware of the chaos outside. And I was relieved we didn't have children, innocent lives that would have been shattered by her selfish actions. After her father loaded the last of her belongings into his car, I addressed them one final time. "Sarah, you've made your choices. You've destroyed this marriage, and there's no coming back from it. I hope you think about what you've done every single day." Her father looked at me with a mixture of sorrow and respect. He said quietly, I'm sorry for what my daughter has done to you." Then he turned to Sarah and said, "Let's go. You're coming home, but things will be different from now on." As they drove away, the lawn was finally empty, but my heart still felt heavy. The betrayal I had uncovered wasn't just about infidelity, it was about trust, respect, and the bond we had vowed to share. Sarah had thrown all of that away for someone else. In the days and weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life, piece by piece. The anger that had burned so brightly that Valentine's night began to fade, leaving behind a quieter, steadier resolve. I knew I had done the right thing by standing up for myself, even if the process was messy and painful. Sarah moved back in with her parents, though her relationship with them was far from intact. From what I've heard, they were deeply disappointed in her. Her father, especially, seemed to struggle with the idea that his daughter could behave so recklessly and deceitfully. They imposed strict rules. She had to go to work and come straight home, no excuses. Sarah had no freedom left, and the life she'd built around her lies crumbled further when word of her behavior spread to her workplace. I wouldn't be surprised if she lost her job entirely. As for Alex, I don't know if they're still seeing each other or if their fling fizzled out under the weight of everything that happened. Honestly, I don't care. Whatever happens in Sarah's life now is no longer my concern. She made her choices, and she has to live with the consequences. For me, the hardest part has been letting go of the life I thought I had. I loved Sarah deeply, and the betrayal cut to the core. But I've come to see this experience as a painful but necessary lesson. It reminded me of the importance of honesty and self-respect in any relationship. I've also found solace in the small blessings. I'm grateful we didn't have children, kids who would have been caught in the crossfire of Sarah's decisions. And I'm thankful for my dog, Lucky, who has been a source of comfort and a reminder of the stability I still have. Looking back, I realize that infidelity doesn't happen in isolation. Every action has consequences, and Sarah's choices didn't just hurt me, they unraveled her entire world. She betrayed the trust of everyone who cared about her, and now she's left to face the wreckage. If there's one piece of advice I can share from this painful chapter, it's this: trust is the foundation of any relationship, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to rebuild. Don't compromise your self-worth by staying with someone who doesn't value honesty and commitment. If you've ever faced betrayal like this or know someone who has, take this as a reminder to prioritize your well-being. It's hard to walk away, but sometimes it's the only path to healing. If you found this story meaningful or relatable, please support my channel by subscribing. Your engagement helps me share more stories and lessons like this one.